Welcome back to Fan Travel Stories, a proud part of the Tickets to Travel podcast network, where every ticket comes with a passport stamp and every diehard fan has a story worth flying for. I'm your host, Mario Bedouin, and today we're going deep into the mind of a real football superfan. Meet Dipak Patel, travel industry insider, loyal Tottenham supporter, and man, more Euro trips around Spurs' home schedule than most of us plan our entire year. This episode is about more than fandom. It's about travel behaviors, booking strategies, stadium vibes, and a little tattoo commitment or two. Dipak also shares his experience using the Go City Pass to explore stadiums and sites around London, including a walk to the top of the stunning Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Pro tip, if you want to follow his footsteps, grab your own Go City Pass and use promo code TTTPOD25 for 10% off your next Go City adventure. Whether you're in it for the football or just want to level up your event travel offerings, this episode is packed with insights for fans and B2B pros alike. Let's kick things off. This is Fan Travel Stories, so follow us on all the socials at Tix2TravelPod and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, because the Fan Travel Stories on Tickets to Travel starts now. Welcome to Tickets to Travel, the business of travel experiences. I'm your host, Mario Bedouin, and today we have a super fan of Tottenham Hotspurs. And he's a good friend of mine that we've known for a long time.
20 years, Mario.
I think it's been 20. Yeah, it's got to be 20 years. Dipak Patel, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to see your smiling face and talk to you. Super jazzed about this.
Here's the other unique piece, is that you are a travel professional. So as we talk to fans and super fans and other B2B professionals in the travel, ticketing, and live events world, I think you have a very unique perspective because you understand how the sausage is made, the background of contracting supply, distributing it, working with various attraction suppliers, and also maybe even sports ticketers.
Yeah, we met at Expedia 20 years ago in the New York City office. I was not in the hospitality space at all, but Expedia was the company that brought me to Chicago, which is my home. I love Chicago, and I've been here 20 plus years, and I love the city, and I've continued to be in the hospitality space after I left Expedia at some various companies. I'm sure when we first met in the New York City offices, I had a really thick, believe it or not, I'm actually English, and I used to have a really thick English accent. I know yourself and some of our colleagues would make fun of my accent sometimes because it was much more thick. And as I like to describe it, I used to sound like Hugh Grant. But over time, it's changed.
Hugh Grant's pushing it. And I think we were trying to just place it, right? Because you're Indian, British Indian.
Yeah, British Indian. I was born and raised in England of Indian descent. So I've never spent any time in India, just born and raised in London, and then came to the States. And I came to America when I was 13. So if I moved to America when I was 17, I would have kept my accent. So over time, it's slowly morphed into whatever it is now. And even now, people don't quite understand where I'm from. And they always ask me, where are you from? And my usual response is, where do you want me to be from? And honestly, most people think I'm Australian. And that's the number one response people give me now.
You sound like Chicago.
Which I think local Chicagoans would not think that. You want to go back to England, nobody thinks I'm English either.
I think that's important to note to a certain degree because you're from London, right?
From London, born and raised, and talking about being a super fan and being a football fan. We're not going to call it soccer on this podcast here.
I've had other football fans on from the U.S. who traveled. And so what I'm trying to understand is, when did you start becoming a Spurs fan, or why you're a Spurs fan?
Yeah, so one thing that you probably know, a lot of folks in England and the UK and Europe in general, like football is the number one sport, and we're bred with that. And I'm not sure exactly when my love of football began, specifically with my team, but I would say it's probably around 8 or 9 years old. I remember watching on TV, distinctly watching some of our matches. And back then, we were pretty good. And we had some amazing players at the time, like Glenn Hoddle. We had two folks from Argentina who just recently won the World Cup. And them coming to the UK and coming to our team was such a big deal.
What if you could simplify your trip, skip the lines, and save up to 50% off at the world's best attractions? With GoCity, you can. One pass, one app, and full access to top experiences in 25 plus cities, including Chicago, London, Paris, and New York. GoCity helps travelers win at sightseeing without the stress. Visit GoCity.com and use code TTTPod25 for 10% off your next pass. Looking to upgrade your ticketing game? TickStock is your all-access pass to smarter, faster ticket distribution. Say goodbye to clunky systems and hello to real-time inventory, streamlined operations, and global reach. All in one sleek platform. Whether you're a reseller, rights holder, or event pro, TickStock connects you to the world. TickStock.com, where tickets move smarter.
If you love football, you watch our team. We're known as a team that plays with flair. And the beautiful game is how we describe it. And so I've always been a Spurs fan. So I'm just a hardcore fan. I've also got 2 Spurs tattoos as well, which I can show you. But my love of football began at a very early age.
Do you remember the first game you went to?
I've only started going to matches about 15 years ago. And when I started going back to England every single year, and I typically go back once or twice a year now. So my first Premier League match wasn't actually a Spurs match either. It was a Chelsea match. At least it wasn't Arsenal. It wasn't an Arsenal match. Arsenal, for your audience, is our biggest rival. We don't like them. They don't like us. It's understood. But my first Premier League match was a Chelsea match. And I remember going with a childhood friend who had tickets and just being amazed about, the atmosphere. And the Chelsea Stadium is also an old stadium and the seats are really close together. So you're touching your elbows with everybody else. And I remember the match was like 7-1. And 7-1 in a football match is a very high score. So I was wondering, are all matches like this for high scoring? But I remember that was my first specific Premier League match. But then I think the following year I went to my first Spurs match. And at that time we played at our old stadium called White Hart Lane. And White Hart Lane was over probably 100 years old. It was cranky, but the stories and the fans were truly amazing. And we were lucky to win that match. And all the chanting and the cheering was something I will definitely never forget. I will never forget that stadium. The new stadium is by far the best football stadium in Europe, but it doesn't quite have the same atmosphere as our old stadium, which was really close to the pitch. And the fans were so close to each other. And the chanting, the cheering was just truly amazing. But yeah, so my first match was not a Spurs match, but I've made up for that in the meantime. And I typically go on every trip to at least 2 Spurs matches. I've seen them play at other stadiums around London as well.
Ironically, my first and only Premier League match was at the old White Hart Lane. I think I mentioned this to you before. I remember very vividly them asking me, where are you sitting? Because I had bought resale tickets, I believe on StubHub. I had center of the pitch, second row, third row. And I remember being, one, very jet lagged. I was on a red eye. And I said, you know what? I'm here. I'm just going to go buy tickets and go. I remember getting shuffled into this one side because they wanted to separate the Sunderland fans from the Spurs fans. And I got to tell you, the hairs on my arm stood up when the chanting started because I'd only seen it either on FIFA video or on television. But to actually be there and experience it, it's hard to describe. And I'm not even a Spurs fan. I'm not. I could see why this is a driver for you to go. Because how often do you go now?
So I typically go once or twice a year to Europe. And I definitely make a point of planning it around the Spurs schedule as well, because obviously the schedules come out quite a few months in advance. And so I plan it out so I can try to see at least 2 Spurs matches. But I am such a hardcore football fan. I try to see as many matches as possible from other teams as well. So the one thing I won't go do is see an Arsenal match, but I have been to probably 8 to 10 stadiums all over London and then been to other cities in the UK as well to see not just Spurs matches, but other teams as well. and also see matches from the other leagues, which is something I would highly recommend for the audience, is not just go to Premier League matches, go to matches from the Championship or the First Division. With the onslaught of Wrexham being so popular in the US, you've seen how they've gone from the National League to the Second Division, and now they're going to be in the Championship. But the experiences at those other stadiums and smaller stadiums is not quite the same as the Premier League, but can be so much better because of the atmosphere. And these are true fans and they're also in parts of the country that are little. The really awesome thing about football stadiums in England is that then in the US, when NFL stadiums are on their own, football stadiums in the UK are part of the neighborhood. They're essentially across the street. You'll see rows of houses and people. They're in the local neighborhoods, and that's really cool. You have local bars, so you want to soak up the whole experience. And as we'll talk about, it's a lot easier to get tickets for those other divisions, and you're not going through resellers or paying those crazy prices. But highly recommend going to those other stadiums in other divisions. And I've seen matches all over Europe. So in Portugal, in Spain, in Germany, Turkey was actually one of my earliest experiences at arguably one of the loudest football stadiums in the world. But I've seen matches all over Europe, and I'd highly recommend that as well. And it sometimes could be easy to get tickets to matches from other parts of Europe as opposed to Premier League, which is there's always a premium to get tickets for the Premier League matches and can be quite expensive as well.
But you live in Chicago.
Yeah.
So how do you typically plan your travel? How do you figure out which games you have to go see versus the ones that you're just going to go see for fun? And then how do you plan getting there to start?
Going back to what I said, since the schedules are pretty much set for the whole year, except for some of the secondary competitions. So since I'm a Spurs fan, I will plan it around the Spurs schedule, where ideally I'm going to see one of the matches at home, maybe one away. So since I know the schedule, I typically go in the fall or February, March time period. So I'll look at the schedule, plan out when I want to go. And then ideally, there'll also be some midweek matches as well, so I can see some other teams play. You have that information online. So that's the first thing I do. And then based on that, typically when I go is when it's easy to find flights and cheaper to fly there as well from Chicago. Chicago has a lot of direct flights. I only fly United Airlines. They have, I think, 3 or 4 direct flights to London every day. So based on when I'm going, I usually fly out on a Friday, because your soccer experience is exactly what I do. I land, and then a couple hours later, I go to my first match. And then typically I've been going for either 10 days or 2 weeks. So based on the schedule, time of the year, I'll book my flights. And then around that, I'll plan what are the matches I'm going to go to, my hotels, and then get in the tickets. So initially, the first thing is looking at the schedule. Second thing is planning the flight. Third thing will be getting the tickets. And then from there, planning the hotels and going to whatever activities I'm planning on doing in restaurants.
When you see the schedules, you're like, I'm going to go to these 3, 4 games, 5 games, whatever it is. Then you book the flights first? Or do you find that because you already know that there's probably tickets available, so you'll book the flights and then book the tickets?
Yeah, I know what Spurs matches I want to see.
So you separate it by games that you strategically want to go to. Then you book the flights and then look at tickets. So how do you organize that?
Yeah, so I think about it in the sense of, I know I want to go. I know what time of the year I want to go. I will look at the schedule in terms of the specific team that Spurs are going to play. That doesn't necessarily really matter. It's more of, I know if I'm going for this specific time period, they're going to be playing 2 home matches or 2 matches in London that I can get tickets to. I'll figure out when I want to go. And then I will look at the flights. And typically when I go in the fall or February, March time period, United Airlines typically has 3 or 4 flights to London every single day. And they tend to be on the more reasonable side. So I'll book my flight next. Getting tickets is the third part of this planning. So every team in Europe has a supporters club, and you can join that supporters club and you have some benefits. So being a member of specifically the Spurs supporters club, you have access to tickets if available. Stadium is about 65,000 people. If they don't sell out to season ticket holders, you have access to those tickets. But more importantly, there's a secondary market where folks who can't go to the match because, they have a wedding or they're out of town or whatever, you can buy tickets directly through them through the Spurs website. And what's really great about that is that they can't charge 2x or 3x. It's essentially face value. So for me, it makes sense to join the supporters club because you have access to those tickets. You also have access to getting a discount through the Spurs store or through the online website and through other activities that the team offers as well. So there's a small cost for that membership, annual membership. Every team has different benefits and different access to tickets. So if you're a supporter of Manchester United or Liverpool and you're planning to go to England and see their matches, I would highly recommend joining the supporters club and kind of understanding what the benefits are. And one of those benefits might be getting access to tickets or getting access to the secondary tickets where folks who can't go will sell tickets to other supporter members.
That game that I mentioned, I had great tickets. Like I said, I think I got it through StubHub. And when I got there, I was sitting second row with people who've had these tickets for decades. So I was buying it from one of their friends. And so I remember very vividly this woman saying, "How much you pay for this ticket?" I don't know. I think it was like $75. And she started laughing. She started cracking up because obviously her ticket price was probably $20 or whatever it was. And she had them forever, right? So they have these kind of generational seat license deals with these super fans or people who've grown up supporting that particular team. And so that was an interesting thing. It's also happened to me at the Garden a couple of times when I go see the Knicks. I'll have great tickets, maybe a lower bowl or something, and someone will lean over and be like, "How much did you pay for this?" Because they're another season ticket holder, right? Who's like, "How much could I have gotten for this particular game?" And so I got into that. Has happened to me so often that I'm like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, but every single match that happens, actually, because the folks on either side of you, they know that you're not the regular person who sits there. So they'll start asking those questions. And that's happened to me not only in England, but when I see matches in other countries as well. It's interesting, back 10, 12 years ago, before everything became virtual and online, season ticket holders had a physical card. And so if they were selling their tickets to other folks through third-party companies, reselling companies, they would have to send the card to you, and usually it was to a hotel, because I was staying in a hotel. And then immediately after the match, I had to mail it back to them. So no antiquated system in the sense of if the mail did not come on time, last minute you get to the hotel and you don't have this ticket yet, you're reaching out to the ticketing company to say, "Hey, where's my ticket?" And so that was kind of harrowing at first because you're worried about getting your tickets. Everything now is online and done digitally. But yeah, there was many a time where I was waiting for that physical card that would get you access to that ticket for that stadium and for that match.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting culturally. Could you think about the Chicago Bears doing the same thing in terms of proving out in actuality, their fandom, right? Their super fandom by being an established card-carrying member. That's why they call them clubs, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you can bring your union ID or your driver's license in case your United Airlines Mileage Plus card.
Right.
Now it's so much easier.
So you've got your flights. You go through United. You're obviously a member there. Your preferred method is to go to the Spurs site.
So before everything became digital, I would have to go through some of those third-party websites. Like initially, I was using StubHub and a couple of other companies. But the company that I highly recommend for your audience and has done me no wrong over the last few years is a site called livefootballtickets.net. Again, footballtickets.net. And they're the most reputable company in this space. And they have tickets to matches for all the major matches in Europe and the finals, et cetera, et cetera. And so on this past trip, I went to 6 matches, 2 matches on my own. And then I had some friends who came over as well. So we had to go through them 3 or 4 times because we were seeing non-Spurs matches. And they were always reputable. They always had tickets available. Some more on the cheaper side, some are more on the more expensive side based on what particular match it was. But it was definitely by far the most reputable company and the company I would recommend in today's time if you're going to see a Premier League match. If you're seeing a match in the championship or the first division or overseas, you can buy a ticket directly from the team's website. And I've seen matches for 20 pounds essentially in the championship or the first division at these really amazing stadiums. Teams that used to be in the Premier League, now they've dropped down, etc. So getting tickets for the non-Premier League matches, you should never have to go to a resale website. Just go directly to that team's website and you should be able to get tickets. Because typically they don't necessarily sell out and it is a very much different experience and it's a lot easier to get tickets for those matches. I am lucky enough to be able to book hotel employee rates at a couple of different brands. And that is through connections that I have.
Being part of the industry, in quotation.
Being part of the industry, a very tight-knit industry. So I always book tickets directly through those channels. And to give you an example, I will typically stay at hotels for between 50 to 70 euros a night at some nice hotels. I am very lucky to be able to do that. That is not how most folks book hotels. I totally understand that. I am lucky enough to do that. But if I was not doing that, I would definitely try to utilize some of the big OTAs like Expedia and Booking. Obviously, Airbnb is another option as well. And if you're going with a number of folks, Airbnb might be a great option because 3 or 4 folks can share an apartment together in one space. I'm very fortunate. I recognize that. And that saves me a lot of money.
So for you as a super fan who's traveling, is it more proximity to the stadium or other things you want to do that sort of dictates whether or not you go with this particular property to stay at?
Yeah. So typically, since I have the relationships with specific hotel brands, it's going to be more so based on where I can get that more affordable rate. And the cool thing about London specifically, or any city in Europe, the public transportation system is so much better than the US. So getting around a particular city, even a big city, train or bus is super accessible and super easy. So specifically for the Spurs Stadium, there are really no hotels in that specific area. So I'm typically staying between 3 to 5 miles away anyway, and then taking a train, usually sometimes an Uber, to the matches. The other cool thing with the relationships that I have with the hotels, there's so many locations. I will definitely look at the location and specifically where I can get that more affordable rate. And then again, public transportation is so amazing in London. I'm never concerned about how far away it is.
I agree. I miss going. I used to go to London, I don't know, once every quarter for 5 years. And then the pandemic happened and then we stopped. So I haven't been back since, but you're right. The transportation, the tube, the buses, all very intuitive in London. In terms of the hotels though, if that's the case, then there's probably, you have the match and then you're there for a few days. So what else do you like to do when you're in destination? Not just London, but anywhere else. Do you typically do the main sightseeing?
Yeah, love seeing the attraction. So one of the things I like to do is typically research wherever I'm traveling, whether it's on the sightseeing side or the restaurant side. So I will do activities. Usually the matches on the weekends are in the daytime. And then the weekday, they're in the evening. So if the matches is the weekday, the match will be 7:30 or 8 o'clock. So you have the whole day to explore the city, do various things. If I'm new to that city, I want to see the top sites. I like doing walking tours as well, because you get to explore the city and hear the history of whatever the theme of that walking tour is from that tour guide as well. And then being a foodie, I will definitely try to research restaurants. I try to find places that tourists don't go to, where the locals go to. And part of that is doing some research, but then also asking folks once I get there. I think that's really key, is asking folks, hey, if you have a night out, where are you going to dinner? As opposed to the top 10 list in TripAdvisor, I want to find out where the locals go, because that's where you find the best food, the most affordable food as well, and those hidden gems that you're not necessarily going to find on travel books or certain websites. It's a combination of things. And even with the sightseeing, some things I'll plan where you have to schedule a specific ticket. But other things I will, again, talk to locals and understand what's cool, what's not cool, what should be missed, what's a tourist trap, and kind of plan my trip, 50% plan my trip, 50% of it, I will figure it out once I get there.
Got it. And so if you were, what's the next trip? Is obviously we got the World Cup coming here next year, but into Europe at some point towards the end of this year, I would think, because didn't the Champions League just end? And there's also the FIFA Club World Cup this summer here as well. So what's on the agenda?
So there's a few things actually. So Spurs is actually playing in the Europa League final next week.
Oh, wow.
They're playing a team called Manchester United, which is probably a team that a lot of folks know. They're one of the big teams. So we're playing the match in Spain. Unfortunately, I can't go all the way to Spain to watch the match, but I'm actually going down to New Orleans with a couple of friends of mine to watch the match at the New Orleans Supporters Club bar for Spurs. Whatever team you support, you usually will have a bar associated with that team as well. Whether you're in the Real Madrid or Barcelona or Manchester United in Chicago, they have a bar. And so Spurs has this bar in New Orleans that I've been to a couple of times during some trips. And they are the most friendly bunch of folks. They have the best singing, the chants. So just because Spurs does not necessarily get into a lot of finals, we're going to go down there to watch the final and have a really awesome New Orleans experience. And then I have a work trip to Prague in the summertime. So I'm going to go to Budapest and Vienna and Rome. So I haven't started any planning for those cities yet, but that will be happening in the next few weeks. And I'll do some research of things I need to see, restaurants, and then some of the things I'll plan once I get there. And then the Premier League is actually coming to Chicago in the summertime. They're playing 2 back-to-back matches at Soldier Field. So there's 4 Premier League teams playing on that one evening. So we bought tickets for that game. The 6 of us are going. And then I'm sure I'm going to go back to England in the fall. It's a little bit too early to plan that because the schedule is not out. But as we get closer to August and September, I'll be looking at the schedule and figuring out if I'm going to go in the fall or in the springtime of 2026. So a lot of my trips are planned around football, and hopefully Spurs wins a trophy, which we've not done since about 16 years. And so that's one thing. The team that I support is not one of the quote unquote big boys. We have not won a lot of trophies, and it's a big deal to be in this final. And so I am a true hardcore fan as opposed to supporting one of those big teams that a lot of folks like.
You say you're a hardcore fan. When you meet a Spurs fan in London, do they give you the same respect?
Oh, I think they do. And they do because I'm knowledgeable about the team, A, and then I go to matches all the time. And I'm not sure if you know this or not, but I have 2 Spurs tattoos as well. And so once I know they're a Spurs fan, and even in the US, there's a lot of Spurs fans in the US, and you can tell because they also the jersey that they're wearing or the jacket they're wearing. So whenever I went into a Spurs fan, I will always show my Spurs tattoo because it's like a badge of honor, so to speak. And
is it on your or?
Yeah, I have 2 on my arm. I can show your audience as well. Once they see that, they know that I'm a hardcore football fan, though I live in Chicago, as opposed to being in England.
What made you? Were you drinking one night and you just said, hey, I'm going to get a tattoo, or this was a calculated tattoo?
These were calculated tattoos. The first tattoo I got in England at a tattoo parlor where a lot of football players get their tattoos, actually. So the guy who did the tattoo is a lifelong Spurs fan as well. He has a number of Spurs tattoos all over his body, but he does a lot of football players as well. So that was my first Spurs tattoo about 10 years ago, I'd say. And then in January of this year, I decided to get a second tattoo, not because of any specific reason. I was just inspired and I wanted to do it. So I did it. And I love this second tattoo.
Is this the crest? Or audio only podcast, Dipak? So is it a crest? You describe them a bit?
So the first one's
huge.
And then the second one is the new logo for our team as well. So these are tattoos that are going to stand the test of time. And the crest is the cockerel that is on a football. And it's essentially been like that through 145-year history. We're one of the other teams as well. So that one crest is always going to be there. So it's going to stand the test of time. And so when I become wrinkly and 85 years old, it will still look good, hopefully.
I don't know, man. You got to talk to these marketing people. They can rebrand at any time. And then that's another tattoo you're going to have to put on.
But the Cockwell, I think, will be fine. I think the other one might change over the time for sure. But I love my tattoos. If I might get more, you never know. I'm never going to get a player because players change teams all the time. But yeah, I love my tattoos. And I think that's the badge of honor that when I show that to another Spurs fan, they know you're the real deal.
I like the tattoo story. Have you ever met who is the craziest super fan you've ever met for the Spurs?
I would say this tattoo guy because he was head to toe. He had so many Spurs tattoos and he does a lot of football players as well, even on his face and his neck, etc. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. If you're doing that, yeah, I think you're a super fan.
You are a super fan. And I'm pretty sure he's older, right? So you have to imagine, I don't know, what is it, like in the 80s and 90s, where it was literally like gangs, right? The hooligans.
An Arsenal fan or a hooligan of some kind, that could cause some trouble for sure.
So you were able to take advantage of a Go City stadium tour. Can you describe the experience or how it came about?
Yeah, so Go City, for your audience is a digital sightseeing pass company. We're the global leader in the space. And essentially it's one pass that gets you access to, in London, over 100 attractions and experiences. So we actually work with a number of football stadiums in London. So you could do the inside background tour of a Premier League stadium. So we work with a number of teams like West Ham and Arsenal. And we also work with the Spurs stadium. So you could do a stadium tour. And the stadium tour is really a fun thing to do, especially for those first timers who are visiting London and for going to matches. You get to see the locker rooms, learn about the history, go on the field as well, see all the VIP boxes. It's a really awesome experience. And with Go City, it's one of the activities that is an option on the pass. So this time around, since I had 4 friends with me, we did the stadium tour of the Spurs Stadium. Additionally, on the Spurs Stadium side of things, you can do a walk to the top of the stadium.
That's what I was going to say. I noticed in the social media post that you were like strapped into a harness.
So there's a stadium walk tour where you can essentially walk to the top of the stadium and basically look out onto the field. And then as an add-on, you can also rappel off the side of the stadium. I've done that a couple of times, and it's a really fun thing to do for those folks who like those adrenaline type activities. The view from the top of the stadium is amazing. You get to see all of London and the downtown area, and a nice sunny day you can see for probably like 20 miles, I would say. So it's a really awesome experience. It's for any ages as well. There were young kids that were doing this when I was doing this tour back in February. And so a lot of these football stadiums in England will have stadium tours. So no matter what team you are, you can hopefully go to that stadium and see the ins and outs of the stadium, go to the pitch and the changing rooms. It's a really cool experience, especially if you're a fan of whatever team it may be. And luckily with Go City, you have access to do that with a few different teams in London.
That's awesome. As this is tickets to travel, what would be your top 3 tips for anybody, whether it be booking tickets or just setting up their travel to go to a European football club?
Yeah.
Or big game? What do you think?
So first thing is, if you are supportive of a specific club, look at the schedule. Plan out the trip based on the schedule and try to go during those off-season months because it's going to be a little bit cheaper for tickets, for the flights, and for hotels, etc. So if you go there and go in August or September, May, it's going to be more expensive as opposed to going in October, November, and February and March, etc. So that's the first thing. In terms of getting tickets, try to belong to the supporters club. That's going to be the easiest way to get tickets. Hopefully they have a ticket exchange program where you can buy tickets from season ticket holders who can't go to those matches. And that will be by far the easiest way and the cheapest way as well. And then thirdly is go to matches that are in the lower leagues, whether it's a championship or the first division or second division. You'll have a different kind of experience and it's a lot cheaper as well. And you'll have some great seats. And the way that they play in those matches is a little bit different as well. These are folks that the fans are true fans because they're giving up their Saturdays and Sundays to watch these teams play. They're not necessarily going to win the Premier League or the Champions League. These are true hardcore fans. And it's a different kind of experience and sometimes even better than going to your own matches as well. So those are the top three things. Looking at the schedule and then trying to go during the off season, so to speak, and then joining the supporters club. And then thirdly, going to those matches. And I'm going to add one more is going to the stadium tours because I think that will offer you a different kind of experience. And if you're not necessarily knowledgeable about that team, you learn about the history and you get to learn, you become more of a super fan, hopefully, by going to that stadium tour.
Amazing feedback. What are your thoughts on the World Cup for next year?
I've looked into getting tickets and there's also the World Club Championship taking place in the summer in Chicago and the ticket insanely high. And they're also telling you if you buy a certain amount of tickets, you have access to get World Cup tickets as well. From my understanding from the FIFA tickets, FIFA World Cup tickets are going to be super expensive. It's going to be hard to get to as well, hard to get those tickets. And you're not able necessarily, you have to buy packages essentially. So I don't think it's going to be something that the common fan is going to have great appetite for because the prices are going to be nuts. And logistically, it's going to be a challenge. And honestly, it's going to be a lot of more fun to watch the game at local bars with lots of folks and have an amazing atmosphere with a packed bar, singing songs. And whether you're supporting the US or Germany or Spain, etc., I think that's going to be a much more fun experience as well. Unfortunately, the FIFA World Cup is not going to be taking place in Chicago. So I'd have to fly somewhere as well. So to see a World Cup match is not great, to be honest.
That's what I'm getting at, is that the price of the ticket is probably a deterrent in terms of, especially for the World Cup or the FIFA Club World Cup that's happening this summer. You're a passionate fan. I'm sure there's millions of others who are just like you. What's an acceptable ticket price for something of this caliber? Because obviously this is not a league game. It's not a preseason game. How do you look at this? Do you think you're willing to pay, no matter where you are in the stadium, another 30%, another 40%? Like, how do you justify it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. If I'm traveling by myself, it's also easy to get one ticket or two tickets as opposed to three tickets or more when you're talking about Premier League matches or any kind of match in Europe, because season ticket holders are typically a small group of folks. So if you're buying a bunch of tickets, it's hard to get 4 tickets together. You might have to split up between 2 and 2 as an example. So getting single tickets is a little bit easier. It's a little bit cheaper. But if you're getting 2 tickets together, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. And so you have to understand what your budget is. If I'm going to a non-Spurs match, I typically don't want to pay a crazy amount for a ticket because I'm not a supporter of that team. So it's more about being able to see that match at a reasonable price that is not going to be obscene to me.
How much would you pay to see USA versus England, hypothetically?
I would, for that kind of match, probably up to, a little bit cheap, but probably $500, I'd say. I'll be honest.
Okay. So that'd be your get in. So you might be up on the bleeders, but just to be there.
It was the final. If England was, so it's interesting, like, even though I was born in England, majority of my life has been in the UK, but when it comes to national teams, England is always going to be number one, and then the UK, and then the US. But if England was in the final and I had a chance to go to a match, I would probably pay a couple $1,000s, I'd say, easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you would expect to be where in the stadium?
Even for that amount of money, it's going to be a nosebleed seat, because knowing England has not been in the World Cup final since 1966. So the secondary market is going to be nuts. Good tickets probably going to cost you 5 figures, I would suspect, if England is in.
Of thinking about it that way, like, what would you be willing to pay for next year's World Cup if it was? So you said $2,000?
Yeah, I think $2,000, something in that range. It's also in New York City, so then in the New Jersey Meadowlands, you got to factor that in as well.
You can stay with family.
Yeah, I had to stay with family, something like that, because hotels are going to be insane, of course. If I had the opportunity to go to the finalist Spurs is playing next week is in Bilbao. If I had the opportunity to go there, I would totally do it. But unfortunately, I can't. But that would be another match I'd pay a couple $1,000s for as well.
to justify, because I've heard the same things, that the ticket prices are out of this world, especially for the Club World Cup. And these are giant stadiums that you want to fill. And so they're using that as an incentive to get people access for the World Cup.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to see what the breaking point is for certain fans to say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go to a bar. What's the point? And that's why I was asking about a percentage.
Yeah.
If I'm used to paying $300 for a lower bowl type of seat, I'll pay up to 150 times that, right? So you'll go up to 1,000 or whatever it is to be in the building. So I was just trying to find a metric of some type that might be helpful to people who are pricing these tickets.
I think it also depends on if you're a supporter of that team or not. You're going to pay different metrics if you are a supporter.
Yeah.
So like the Club World Cup, I understand they've not been necessarily selling out all the tickets. I don't know what's going to happen towards. They don't want to have empty stadiums. Interesting to see what happens as we get closer to the game, to the matches. And also, there's a lot of matches. It's 64 teams. There's going to be a lot of matches that nobody is really a true fan of those two teams. So I don't know what they're going to do, or if they're going to be played at smaller stadiums. And the appetite is less and less when the matches are not taking place in your home city as well. If there was a Club World Cup match or FIFA match in Chicago, different story, because I'd be willing to pay more because I'm not having to fly there or pay for hotels or anything like that. So it all depends on who the teams are and the location in terms of how much I'm willing to fork out.
Yeah, I mean, it'll obviously New York, Miami, and LA will probably be more packed. Obviously, I'm sure they'll think about that in terms of placing which teams are going to play where. Kansas City, Atlanta, those might be a little bit more difficult. Like you could probably get to Kansas City pretty cheap, but depending on what round and if it's, I don't know, Cameroon versus Bolivia or some not top tier countries, they're probably going to have to price them accordingly. But then it's about marketing. It's about getting it out there and giving people the awareness that it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think with the Women's World Cup that was in the US more recently, there were some stadiums that were not full. I know that in the World Cups and European Championships as well, like it depending on where the matches are and who's playing, they don't necessarily sell out all the time. But hopefully, I think FIFA has done a really bad job of ticketing these events, and the prices are keeping a lot of people out. The same thing in MLS as well. There's certain teams. There's a team in Chicago that plays at Soldier Field. They have challenges getting even 20,000 people to go to the match. So there's a lot of sporting events in MLS teams in the US. Some markets do really well with MLS, like Portland and LA and Miami because of Messi. But there's a lot of empty stadiums where folks are getting priced out because taking a family of four becomes more and more expensive. And I think in today's time where people are becoming more price sensitive, what that breaking point is, management and ownership needs to think about that.
Wow. Yeah, no, I think that would resonate for some of the professionals who listen. So appreciate you giving some feedback on your travels and ticket buying behavior for the Spurs, as well as just in general, being a super fan. So I appreciate you being on Tickets to Travel, Dipak.
You're welcome, Mario. It was great to see you and talk about this and something I'm passionate about. So I know there's a lot of folks that are passionate about all sports, but especially football. Like football is becoming bigger and bigger, especially in the US. And I'll leave you with this one of the Spurs sayings here. Come on, you Spurs.
When's the next tattoo?
If we win this final next week, it might come sooner than later.
All right, man. Thanks. And that's a wrap on this Fan Travel Stories episode. And if you're in the business of selling travel experiences, I hope you were taking notes. Dipak Patel didn't just give us stories from the stands. He gave us a blueprint for how modern fans travel. Here are the top takeaways for anyone working in B2B event travel, ticketing, or distribution. Number one, fans are planners. They build entire vacations around fixtures. If you're not creating travel bundles that align with the match calendar, you're missing conversions. Number two, loyalty groups like supporters clubs are gold. Dipak books smarter, saves money, and gets better seats, all because he's in the club. Partnerships here could unlock a powerful sales channel for all of you. Number three, tiered access equals wider reach. Not every fan can score a final ticket, but tools like the Go City Pass make it easy to experience stadiums, culture, and iconic attractions without breaking the bank. Speaking of which, if you're heading to London, don't miss the stadium tours and skyline walks Dipak raved about. Use promo code TTTPOD25 at checkout on GoCity.com for 10% off your pass. That's TTTPOD25, your shortcut to sightseeing like a local fan. And number 4, digital is now the default. Fans expect instant booking, verified resale, and smart pricing. Friction-free tech will define the next wave of travel platforms. Number 5, and last but not least, authenticity builds trust. You don't need to be a superfan yourself, but if you want to market to them, you better sound like someone who's been there. Thanks for tuning in to Fan Travel Stories. More insights, episodes, and global matchday inspiration await at tttpod.com, because remember, every ticket is a ticket to travel. Until next time, I'm Mario Bedoin. Thanks. Scrolling is listening. Your brand needs standout audio for social media, and Expo Travel Media makes it happen. Ear-catching radio spots, dynamic social media voiceovers, custom sound design that pops. We craft audio that stops the scroll and keeps your audience engaged. Whether it's a quick promo, a full campaign, or a killer ad, we bring the voice, music, and production magic to make it all shine. Let's make audio content that works. Visit expotravel.com for media production inquiries today.